with a field experience of about 30 to 35 years in administering the educational institutions like Narayana and others. He is presently having his own consultancy at Bangalore, and he is a very well-knowledgeable person. Basically, he is a postgraduate in botany. So we requested him to talk about botany, and he has suggested 2 subjects. Today, he will be dealing with microorganisms, pathogenicity, and he's a good orator. I request him to kindly deal with the subject. Mr. Murali Krishna.
Thank you, sir. Good evening to everybody in the Zoom class. See, today we are going to deal with microorganisms and pathogenicity. I have divided this topic into 2 classes. Today I am dealing with microorganisms, various microorganisms, their categorization, differentiation, all these broader points of microorganisms now I am going to give today. And tomorrow we are now dealing with human pathogens, and now the diseases that we are recently hearing about. And now worldwide, the world was afraid of many diseases earlier. We are going to know discuss about those diseases also tomorrow. Prior to that, what I'm going to tell you is that since it is a science topic, there will be many technical terms in this. But kindly do not worry about the technical terms. What you need to understand is that, see, various characters associated with the categories of microorganisms, so that you will be able to identify what is what. A particular characteristic appears. My idea is to make you understand to which category microorganisms this will cause. So broadly, I'm going to give the details of it without going into many technical terms, without confusing you much, and without making you lose interest in science topic. I pretty well understand that you are all going to give the prelim exams, and majority of you might not be of science background, but unfortunately science is a part of the prelims. You will have to deal with 5 to 6 questions. While going through 2019 question paper, prelims question paper, I have observed one question that was related to hepatitis B. They asked a difference between hepatitis B and C. And now there was a subtlety in the question. You need to understand the question so that you should be able to easily decipher the answer. It was not critical at all. For me, just casually I went through, because now how much importance they are giving to this disease and all that. The reason of choosing this subject today is that next year prelim services, because of this COVID and all that, I am sure some kind of a question is going to come in that, in a tricky fashion, in a straight fashion. We are not sure, but it's going to come. Well, with this introduction now, I am going into the topic. Dear young friends, living organisms are categorized into 2 kingdoms, plant kingdom, animal kingdom. But there are some of the organisms belong to plant kingdom and animal kingdom which do not have similar kind of a structure, organization, cell organization, and then no biochemistry. Such things are taken aside and they have placed them under another kingdom called Protista. Protista. Plant kingdom, animal kingdom, and Protista. Under Protista comes bacteria, virus, some of the algae, some fungi, some protozoa, lichens, slime molds, archaea, and some of the organisms which are not categorized but strewn in various classes and phyla, they are strewn around, but we will concentrate on the microorganisms that are more harmful to the human beings, plants, animals, as well as some beneficial microorganisms of greater importance to human living, like industry, food industry, water, sewerage, and then drinking water, and nitrogen fixation. That means enrichment of the soil. That means what I am saying is that in the organisms, microorganisms, some are useful microorganisms, some are harmful microorganisms. Useful to the mankind, harmful to the mankind. We will deal with these things now a little later. Now, classification, I mentioned about a classification under Protista, plant kingdom, animal kingdom, and Protista. Under Protista, again, two categories are there. They are called eukaryotes and prokaryotes. You know the meaning. Pro, he is not still professional. Pro means it is not true, but it is like true, but it's not true. That means eukaryotes, prokaryotes. Bacteria, virus, and some of the blue-green algae, these three belong to prokaryotes. So here, I told you bacteria, some of the blue-green algae, and then these viruses also, they belong to prokaryotes. And what are the eukaryotes? Remaining things, algae, fungi, protozoa, lichen, slime molds, all these things are eukaryotes. So what is the difference, you may ask me, what is the difference between eukaryotes and prokaryotes? The basic difference between these two is the nucleus wall. There is no nucleus wall in prokaryotes. The nucleus, where now DNA nucleus encircles the DNA. DNA is the genetic material of any organism. There is no wall to the DNA. That means defining a particular shape to the nucleus, DNA was not there in prokaryotes. This is the main thing. That's why, because in the absence of the wall, the DNA forms like either a curved way or in a stranded way. It will not have a shape. It will not have a definite place also. Normally, nucleus is the center point, central place. It occupies central place in any cell. But here in prokaryotes, there is no central place, and the two DNA, the genetic material, will not occupy the central place. This is the major difference. Apart from that, smaller differences are there, like mitochondria, Golgi. Some of the cell components are there, which generally you find in a real cell. Those components will not be there in prokaryotes. But whereas in eukaryotes, all characters of a cell, they are all there. They exist for eukaryotes. Eukaryote means again algae, fungi, protozoa, all these things lichen, these are all come under eukaryotes. Classification part, if you summarize the classification part, animal kingdom, plant kingdom, and which do not belong to these two, they are Protista. Again, Protista is divided into prokaryotes, eukaryotes. Prokaryotes, they are not, they do not have a definite nucleus membrane, and DNA, it do not have a specific place. It can be anywhere in the cell, cytoplasm. But whereas eukaryotes, they are the true cells. That means now all characters that are associated with a cell, they are all there for the eukaryotes. Example for prokaryotes are bacteria, virus, some of the blue-green algae. They are called cyanophytic algae. Also, that is one of the name for blue-green algae, cyanophytic. Cyano means it depicts a color. Cyanophytic algae also come under prokaryotes. For cell structure, cell characteristics, algae, fungi, and then protozoa, lichen. These are all come under this. We are moving on to this next part. The differences between these two also we mentioned. Prokaryotes have it will not have a definite cell membrane, whereas eukaryotes do. Prokaryotes will not have some cell organelles like mitochondria, Golgi, etc. Whereas eukaryotes they have. These are the basic, and DNA will not be there. One chromosome will be there in prokaryotes, whereas now many strands of DNA, many chromosomes might be there in eukaryotes. Where prokaryotes and eukaryotes both have a common feature. They can be unicellular, they can be multicellular. They can be in various shapes. Unicellular means it will have only one single cell. Multicellular means no, it can have more than one cell, that is multicellular. Prokaryotes and eukaryotes can have unicellular organisms as well as multicellular organisms. Well, we have called them as a microorganisms. Why they need to be called as a microorganisms? Because, real simple, you cannot see them with your eye. Without any support to the eye, you cannot see them. That's why here to observe a microorganisms, you need either a magnifying glass, a microscope of various qualities, up to electron microscope. Here the sizes vary from 0.05 nanometers to 300 nanometers. What is a nanometer? Here now normally in your height, weight, now height, human, we call height now in inches or in feet. Weight we call, there is some measure, weight we call in kilos. Whereas here, to decide the size of the microorganisms, you have some standard measurements. We call it in microns, millimicrons, and nanometers, and Armstrong. Armstrong, it's a capital A. Above the capital A, where both lines are converging, if you give a 0 there, it becomes an Armstrong. These are the units for measuring microorganisms. A micron is nothing but 1/100th of a millimeter is called a micron. 1,000th of a millimeter is called a micron. 1/10th of a micron is called a nanometer. Then Armstrong is much smaller units. That is why I am saying that because of the smaller sizes, very small sizes, micro sizes, you cannot watch them through your eye directly. You need the help of a microscope to observe it. That is why together all these smaller organisms are called microorganisms. Another name of microorganisms is microbes. So friends, because of the sizes, these microorganisms, you need to watch through a microscope. Another kind of a microorganism, categorized as a microorganism, but no, you can see with your eye, is that bread mold. You bring bread, you keep it in a moist place. Third day or fourth day, you can see greens come attached to the bread. You feel the bread is now spoiled. Yeah, that is also a microorganism, but it is a macro in nature where you can watch through eye. At the start of the problem, you will not be able to watch through your eye. But whereas in it's magnified, ramified, and now part of the bread is spoiled, then only it is visible to you. That is because of some fungi, whereas that is also under now. Initially, I told you under eukaryotes, fungi also come. Then we go into details, each one carefully. I will only outline the broader characters of these things so that you will be able to understand and differentiate each one. Start with the bacteria. Bacteria are single-celled or multi-celled prokaryote which can occur in different sizes. Size varies, but everything you need to see through microscope. Shapes, they are called a cocci. That means no. One round cell is attached to the other one. That is called a cocci. Some are comma shaped. Some are rod shaped. And some exist in colonies. So you find cocci, bacilli, flagellae, some have a whip kind of a structure attached to it, so that no, this whip kind of a structure helps them in their motility. Motility means no movement. Such bacteria is in water, it wants to know swim from here to there. It uses this whip like thing which we call a flagella, and then no moves across. So it can be in round shape, it can be rod shape, it can be comma shape, and it can be in groups also. It can be flagellate also. These are all common shapes we relate to bacteria. And size, I told you, sizes can vary depending upon the species, and then no genus. Size varies, and here size will not matter. Whatever be the size of a bacteria, you need to see through some helpful equipment. So the size can be magnified into 100 times or 1000 times of the body, 10,000 times also in case of electron microscope. All these microorganisms, they came into some kind of an existence. People started studying from 17th century onwards. Till that time, it was only an assumption, but something is spoiling something. But no, why water is impure? Why no air? Something is. See, all these things, no, people were assuming, but there was nothing, no aid to see. When Mr. Anthony van Leeuwenhoek, he discovered the microscope, then it was the first opportunity for the people to observe microscope under microbe under microscope. So they come to a conclusion, yes, they do exist. Subsequently, in 19th century, Louis Pasteur and then Robert Koch, these two scientists, they have given extended experiments, experimentation on microbes. While Louis Pasteur found that no milk is getting into curd because of some bacterial action. Curd is not being prepared on its own. Milk comes like original one, but now curd, something has to do with milk. And then Koch again, he experimented on various kinds of fevers associated with some kind of bacteria. These two scientists have done extensive studies, and then brought the existence of microbes into the notice of the human beings. Subsequently, many studies were there to decide which bacteria or which microbe is helpful to the human being and which is not. To tell you, all around your air, your water and soil, these microbes exist. You can't say you are no have a pure air. No, it's a myth. If you this air, if you keep in a microscope to any device, you can see, you will find lots of thousands, lakhs of microbes in a particular unit. Likewise, water which you are drinking, keep a drop of water in the microscope, you will find similarly hundreds and thousands of bacteria which are moving in the water. If you see it like that, you will not be able to drink the water. This is the fun of it. But they are all around you. They are on your skin. They are around you, in the air, in the water which you are drinking, in the soil where you are doing all your things. But they will not strike you. They will not cause you any harm until they find a favorable, that means there is a deficiency of the immunity in you. The immunity should go down, then only opportunity comes to the microbe to attack on you. Then it attacks on you, enters into you and cause some kind of a problem to you. You call it a disease. So here it is around, see, everywhere it's around. Some of the useful bacteria, as I mentioned, milk turning into curd, this is a useful bacteria. And in your intestines, there is a bacteria which which helps you in digesting food properly. This is called E. coli. E. coli means Escherichia coli is the name of it. Okay, do not worry about the name. But E. coli bacteria, coli is nothing but colon. Colon is, intestine is otherwise called colon. This bacteria harbors in the colon. It digests the food. It helps to digest the food. It is a helpful bacteria which will be there with the human being, inside the human being. And one more example which if we talk about generally, Ganges, though a lot of impurities are there, every day hundreds of dead bodies are placed in river Ganges in Kashi, all places. Still, you can rate the Ganges water almost equivalent to the purity like any other river, despite all these impurities. There is one particular bacteria that is there in the waters of Ganges that is called Salmonella. Salmonella is the name of the bacteria which eats away the dead bodies, the putrefied things, the skin, all these things, it eats away at a faster rate. That way it is it is cleansing the waters of Ganges. Otherwise, Ganges would have been would not have become useful. Now people stopped using it a long time ago. Because of the Salmonella, it is still showing its purity. Means this Salmonella at abnormal speed, it's eating away everything, whatever impurity is there in the water, eats away. So this is one of the favorable aspects of, useful properties of bacteria. Harmful bacteria, anyway, we are going to know all bacteria, virus causing diseases, we are going to discuss in our next session. Now, bacteria, I told you, it doesn't have it is a single cell or many cell, it has various shapes, and now useful bacteria are there, and then disease causing bacteria are also there. Useful bacteria, some of the useful bacteria I mentioned to you. Some of the harmful bacteria which you already have in your mind, I'll mention it for your reference. Plague, it's a bacterial disease. Again, cholera, it's a bacterial disease. Each bacteria will have a specificity when it has to attack, whom it has to attack, what should be its metabolic activity, which organ gets damaged in a human being or no any other thing, how it proliferates inside, that means how it multiplies inside. All these things are of a greater interest. I mentioned two diseases, bacterial diseases. So this bacteria, I told you, in the bacteria again, there are two things in the bacteria. I mentioned it's a euprokaryotic one. Prokaryotes are again divided into two divisions. One is a prokaryote, there is a true bacteria, and then second is an archaea. Second category is called archaea. How this archaea had come, where from it has emerged, nobody is able to say, but this bacteria in the evolution process, right from the beginning, two branches were developed. Out of that, one has come into the bacteria, eubacteria, that means true bacteria. The other one has emerged into this kind of a bacteria. The characteristic of this archaea is, it is generally not visible in the bacteria you find in normal, in extreme conditions, water conditions, soil conditions, and then human conditions. This archaea is present. There are references where this archaea is lying in a depth of 8,500 square meters inside the sea level. And then there are cases where in hot glaciers, where hot springs emerge, this particular archaea, a bacteria, can withstand a temperature of 90 degrees centigrade. It withstands up to a temperatures of 90 degrees centigrade, means it doesn't have, it will not die. Even in the hardest conditions, extremist conditions, this bacteria will not die. They are very few. Their existence is in a very few places. This is called archaea, but we leave archaea to those points only. We are not further going into that because it's not very relevant for us. Going with bacteria again, I told you true bacteria. I have given examples for useful bacteria and harmful bacteria. Then these bacteria, they divide. They called one process is there called binarization. Each bacteria divides into two. Every 10 minutes, 15 minutes, it divides into two, and then 2 becomes 4, 4 becomes 8. Likewise, when it enters anywhere, it proliferates like anything, and it takes control of the host. Then, after the bacteria, let us go to the viruses. Bacteria, Cyanophyceae algae, that means blue green algae, and then viruses, they belong to, I told you, they belong to one category. These viruses, what you need to know is that they are neither living nor dead. Viruses, you cannot classify them as a living organisms. You cannot classify them under a dead organism. But what are they? They are the borderline microorganisms. That means if they are in the air, in the soil, in the water, they are non-functional. They cannot create any pathogenicity to anybody. That means they cannot cause any diseases to anybody. But once they harbor on a human being, on a plant, on an animal, then it becomes virulent. Virulent means it causes disease. It needs a host. to exhibit its powers. So long you do not get a host, virus cannot create any problem to anybody, be it a plant, animal, or human being. Now, talking about your coronavirus, through cough or sneeze, a droplet falls onto your nose or no near to your mouth, then only you will get those symptoms. If it is not falling on you, it falls on the ground, ground will not get any symptom. Now, sneeze falls on a plant, it will not get any symptom. This particular virus has got a character to cause a disease to the human being, provided it gets dropped on the human being. Any virus, through this mechanism, be it a cough, cold, and then dengue, and then chickenpox, smallpox, mumps, all these viral diseases, they are contagious diseases. Once, unless you touch them, some kind of that pathogen virus comes onto hosts on your body part, then only the disease occurs. Otherwise, no, there won't be any disease at all. Here, what happens is that it falls on a host. It makes the host as its home. It enters inside the host. It starts multiplying. It makes, suppose host, what he does, say he prepares food for you, for the family, and then he wants to eat the food, he keeps it there. Here, what I am saying, food in the sense, it's not prepared in the kitchen. Your body will have glucose. Whatever food you are eating converts into glucose, energy, and then your metabolism is there. This particular virus enters there, with a command, it converts the entire human metabolism into its own metabolism. It has a knack of converting human metabolism, plant metabolism, or animal metabolism into its own metabolism. It starts multiplying, using that energy, using that glucose, everything, using those body parts, it 1,000-fold increase in its number would be there. Slowly it occupies the entire body. Entire body, only virus you will find, none of your parts. All your parts will be filled with virus. So virus has got that a tendency, if it finds a host, it causes disease. Disease is outwardly visible. It makes the diseased person only consists of its virus only, nothing else. And I think time is going out.